Hey, what up, everybody? It's your boy Carson Fox with the recap of West Virginia versus Texas Tech. Oh, what a game it was on week 4 of the college football season. West Virginia coming up victorious at Milan Puskar Stadium 20 to Texas Tech's 13. And again, why this was hugely significant, a stat that we had from the pre-show last week. It was just the 14th time in West Virginia football history. So about 130 years of West Virginia football history, and only 14 times has a West Virginia team defeated a team in which they lost to by 30 points or more the year before. So this was a revenge game. This was a big game for Neil Brown and his resume, beating the Red Raiders, his former team that he was the offensive coordinator for the first time as the head coach of the Mountaineers. So putting that losing streak to Texas Tech to bed, and now moving on with a new, hopefully winning streak in the future. So let's just look at this game, on paper from a macro view, and then we'll bring it all down. Now, how many West Virginia fans out there would have taken this had I said back in, July, August, that by sitting right now in this point of the year, West Virginia would have 3 wins, one of them including Pitt. How many of you would have taken that? I definitely sure was. For absolutely, not considering really the context of any of those 3 wins, just that West Virginia would be starting out 3-1 with a chance to go 4-1, and you defeat Texas Tech with your backup quarterback. I mean, how can you not be absolutely thrilled as a fan? So that's why I kind of want to look at this game through that perspective, that at the end of the day, a win is a win is a win. And if you're going to go by this cliche of you are what your record says you are, without any context whatsoever, to have already beaten Pitt, to have this win in the bag, a team who the Texas Tech was considered really a darling, as Neil Brown said in his post-game preference, really the darling of this conference. Came in hot and loud and proud into this offseason, had a great recruiting class from both the high school and transfer recruiting perspective. Want to be one of the top dogs of this new age Big 12 conference that they're ascending to into the future, and West Virginia beats them. So to have this win already in the bag is awesome. And I think looking back on the full slate of schedule, and you thought, oh my gosh, West Virginia has this horrible September, which they have to play Pitt. They have to go most notably on the road at Penn State. Now they're just coming off the Penn State loss in a game in which Penn State had to throw on within the final 10 seconds to cover that game, and you're 3-1. So you're sitting happy, and I want to break this down for you. So I think number one, the thing that we have to talk about with this game was the effects, and I hate having to talk about this, but it does. It plays a role in the game, in the context of everything, was Tropical Storm Ophelia and the effects of turning this game into Pitt 2.0. For one, I'm really disappointed is because it really ruined the tailgating experience. I think Tony Caridi and the guys on the MSN broadcast called this November weather, and it really did feel like that. I mean, I left my house, and it was 70 degrees and sunny, and I only live really 45 minutes north of Morgantown, but by the time we got to Morgantown, it was cold, it was windy. I'm in a jersey and shorts, and everybody's out in coats and jeans. I'm just like, what in the world? What world have we gone to, just crossing over the West Virginia border? But unfortunately, we got those effects of that tropical storm, lasted even into Sunday today. So it was just nasty weather, but I think that more so negatively affected Texas Tech, as they weren't able to really be who they wanted to be offensively until 45 minutes into the contest. So the weather, though, unfortunately, I think the weather cost some of the people in the crowd, really seemed to thin out come halftime, and that we were only looking at maybe a 20,000 person crowd, like a few of the games you can recall, Oklahoma being one of them, Kansas State last year being one of them. The weather in Morgantown for the last I don't know. There's only been a handful of really good weather games in Morgantown, it seems like. So that was unfortunate. But I do think it also adversely affected the Mountaineers' game plan, having to choose to go more ground than they wanted to. But starting it off, I don't think that was really an excuse for the first interception by Nico Marchiol on his first interception. Really stared down the receiver. I think it was Devin Carter coming up through the seam trying to make a slant straight and out. I don't know what that route is called off the top. It was like a lightning bolt kind of. Stared down the receiver the whole route. Texas Tech defender made an easy read on it, jumped on it, thrown right to him, and had a good bit of a return out of it. But I was really impressed by the WVU defense, standing tall, bending but never breaking, and forcing a field goal right off the bat. I thought the pass rush in this game was awesome. WVU's defense looks so much better than 2022, and that's really the theme of this game that I'll break down in this video. I think the confidence by the defensive backs to keep guys in front of them, Beanie Bishop, Malachi Ruffin, Aubrey Burks, Anthony Wilson. I think you have two tackling machines in Lee Koba and Trey Lathan in front of them. Day Hawkins coming up with a sack, Marcus Floyd with a big sack, Eddie Vesterinen then with a pivotal quarterback pressure late in the game. A lot of different guys stepping up at different times, and I think that's what makes this such a good defense this year. Our players are playing assignment football and coming through when they need to, not having to do someone else's job, not having to think, do I have to save somebody's ass if they get burned, especially if our safeties or make a tackle, if our linebackers can't tackle, or they're getting put on skates by a running quarterback. No, this is a really assigned defense that's playing well so far this season. And what can you say really any more about the recruiting and the NIL retention that involving Country Roads Trust? I know that's kind of going beyond the game in and of itself, but look at the players that West Virginia has brought in recruiting in these last couple of cycles and how they've not only developed in their year two within the system, but I think going in a year one guy, though, going and getting out a Beanie Bishop, going out there and getting an Anthony Wilson, finding them. Tyron Bradley came up with a sack in this contest. Mike Lockhart so much improved in year two. Marcus Floyd made play after play, a sack and a QB pressure at the very end of the game that saved the game, really won the game for West Virginia. So another guy that you went out and got. Out of the FCS level, or no, Middle Tennessee State, I think is where he was from. Hawkins, Tennessee Tech. Trey Lathan's just in his first year as a starter, just a redshirt freshman. So I got to credit this coaching staff. I got to credit the recruiting. The recruiting team so far, it looks like they've found some right players to fit in some right roles, and I'll get to one on offense in just a second. But defensively, I mean, just guys are really stepping up when they need to, and I'm really impressed by that. Even though West Virginia didn't have a turnover forced, and I said that in the pregame show, I don't think, turnovers are great, don't get me wrong, and they can be game changers, but with the amount of plays that Texas Tech runs, it was the tempo, it's the they nickel and dime you, and then they hit you with the big play over the top that you're not expecting, and they rack up points and try to move at warp speed. But in this game, West Virginia slowed it down, at least during the weather portions for 3/4 of this game. You look at the numbers at the end of the day, the Mountaineers held the Red Raiders to just 2 of 18 on third down. I think Ollie Straw and the punt team was excellent in this one, pinning Texas Tech in Red Raider territory on 11 of their 13 drives in this game, and only allowing 4 of those drives for the Red Raiders to enter the WVU red zone. So it wasn't a game of Texas Tech chewing up yards between the 20s like I said it would be, and probably would have been had the weather been much better like it was in the fourth quarter when Texas Tech's offense really started to hum. But for 3/4, the weather being crap out there, and then of course I'll skip back. I think the Tyler Shuck element of Texas Tech going down into I forget what quarter it was, the second quarter maybe. I think the injury to Tyler Shuck took a little more wind out of Texas Tech sails than I thought during the preview video. because I do think Shuck was a bit better of a runner, which Texas Tech really was forced to do because of the weather in this game, and they really wanted to do, I feel like, while the weather was crappy. So, and you saw that in the way that the carries changed as the game went around to then Taj Brooks later on in the third and fourth quarter. He was as good as advertised at the running back position. 149 yards on 25 carries, really doing a lot of damage late in the game. He was excellent. Had I think a 27-yarder for his long, and just seemed like to get stronger and stronger as the game went around. So on the opposite side at quarterback, Baron Morton was not nearly as good as he was last year in Lubbock, only passing for 158 passing yards. Did have a touchdown, but on 13 of 37 completions and on attempts. So that's like Phil Dracovic numbers right there. And 8 carries for negative 12 yards because of the sacks. He also missed out on a huge 4th and 1 attempt on a rush play. Just did not have the same kind of speed and downhill type of running that I think that that Shuck brought to the table. And I think maybe, I think we talked about this with Nico Marchiol for the Pitt game a week ago, that when you're not the starting quarterback and you don't get the full first team reps, that's a whole different mentality than whenever you go in really as a pinch hitting quarterback. And Baron Morton just did not look. He never looked comfortable. He never looked like the offense got into any sort of a rhythm until it was definitely way too late. Some of the more improvised plays that Texas Tech likes to do, he just wasn't converting on. I thought Jaron Bradley, the wide receiver for Texas Tech, was as good as advertised at wide receiver. Just 3 catches, but for 30 yards and a touchdown. I think you could tell he was a little bit pissed at the game situation because of the weather, not getting as involved, not a traditional Texas Tech kind of high-flying offensive day, and not being as on page with Morton in this game. Jordan Brown did have the 1-foot toe-tapping catch late on Texas Tech's offensive drive to give them a chance at tying the game late in the game. So that's a lot on Texas Tech. I want to jump back and talk about the Mountaineers and what I thought out of them on the day. The player that I would shout out from West Virginia's offense the most was tight end Kole Taylor. Really loved what he did in this game. I loved the trick play pass from wide receiver Traylon Ray. He also had the pivotal touchdown catch to put West Virginia up 10 in the third quarter. He may be the best pass catcher that West Virginia has at this point in the season. After a rough day by Devin Carter, who caused Nico Marchiol an interception, and Hudson Clement almost made a comeback catch that was reviewed and then determined to be incomplete. It was really a 50-50 call that West Virginia, or the referees, stayed with on the call on the field. Clement thought he caught it, but just video evidence in that rain, really high, almost like a flying goose that Clement was trying to corral in as he hit the ground, falling forward. Just not a play that you really get a positive review from, but West Virginia tried on that one. I think Neil Brown really wanted to get that. Also, because of not enough of a balanced attack, not really enough running lanes created, C.J. Donaldson was held to just, I think, 48 yards on the day. Did have a 15-yard gainer. Did have the first touchdown of the day for the Mountaineers. Nico Marchiol led the team in rushing in this contest with 72 yards on 15 carries, added some important pickups on the ground, including a big gainer for 19 yards. I liked what Marchiol was able to do with his legs in this game. He's a lot faster than he showed in that Oklahoma State game to end the year last year. I think he's improved in that area. Looks bigger, faster, stronger, just more athletically physical. Just love what he's doing. And also, how about true freshman Rodney Gallagher on his end around, breaking a tackle for a 9-yard pickup that he was really psyched. He was really pumped up after, so that was really cool to see him getting involved. Hopefully he gets involved more down the road. And then how about place kicker Michael Hayes, another guy who West Virginia identified in the transfer portal, went out and now he's replacing Casey Legg, who was so accurate and so successful for many years in Morgantown. 2 for 2 from field goals attempted, including the 46-yarder just before halftime when it was still wet, still rainy, still windy, still nasty out there, and Hayes just drilled it. So I was a little concerned coming into the year. I didn't know much about Michael Hayes, And if you look at him, if you're at a game and you see him, he's not that big of a guy, but man, does he have a boot. And to make that kind of a kick in that kind of a situation, I'm impressed. All hands on deck with Michael Hayes, trusting him to be our place kicker for this whole season. So one of the elements that I think that costs, kind of jumping all over the place with this game, that's kind of the game that it was. There wasn't really necessarily a narrative that we can go chronologically and talk about. It was really the 3 quarters of really crappy weather with a few big plays here and there. I mean, yards, especially first downs, were hard to come by in this game for both sides, and really until the weather opened up, and then it became really all Texas Tech having the momentum late in the game. But thankfully, West Virginia coming up with having a 10-point lead for most of this game, thanks to Kole Taylor's the second touchdown that Taylor scored in this game really helped. But I think one of the elements that really cost Texas Tech in this game was penalty yardage. Having 9 for 96 on the day, including 5 that gave West Virginia first downs. So penalty yardage was as good as offensive yardage for Neal Brown in this contest, and it just seemed like every time that West Virginia wanted to go deep, they were either getting a holding call or a pass interference call. Texas Tech miscues in the name of penalties was huge in this one and cost the Red Raiders, I feel like, us making this a game. Or it could have been a 10-point game that Texas Tech could have won 13-10, it seems like, because penalty yardage aided West Virginia in getting into red zone and finishing them off with touchdowns and field goals. So what I did, just like I said last year, let's talk about the ending. Let's talk about it. What did I say in the pregame show? I figured that this game was going to go late, down to the wire, just like Iowa State in Morgantown 2 years ago when West Virginia avenged a 36-point loss from 2020 to the Cyclones. This game came down to the final play. Thankfully, West Virginia was able to get a rush with just 4 guys, Marcus Floyd making an awesome play to hit Baron Morton as he threw it, and that was the ball game. Now, I think obviously if this game would have went another quarter with the weather the way it was for the fourth quarter, or if the weather was for the fourth quarter for the entire 60 minutes, we may have experienced a different kind of ball game, kind of the way that I was talking about last week. But that's why you play the game. You know, Mother Nature was really smiling on the Mountaineers for this contest. And who really knows who is the better team after this watching one, but I'm seeing one in the Mountaineers having a 3-1 record and Texas Tech now with a 1-3 record. So if you are what your record says, West Virginia is that much better than Texas Tech and coming away with a victory. So it was pivotal. Some of the things, obviously, some of the things I'm a little bit critical of, and this is the only thing that I'll really say of critical because, again, I'll take this victory, cash it. We'll take it and in the ultimate review of the standings for the Big 12 and use this as momentum going into this TCU game. But the passing attack has to get better, I think, not just from the quarterback. And Nico Marchiol owned that, talking about that in his post-game interviews, that he has to play better. He has to be a better passer and make the right plays, decisions, because he did have West Virginia did have 2 turnovers in this contest, but I think the play calls and the designs, even if there's crappy weather or good weather, I still think that this offense is figuring itself out from an attack standpoint. Devin Carter not pulling in balls when he needed to. I wasn't wild at all about the first down bomb on the first play of the last offensive series to EJ Horton. I was really cussing out Neal Brown and for that one. Just did not think it was the time and place for that on first down when you could have potentially milked the clock for more and forced Texas Tech to use one of its timeouts. Now, again, I'm really impressed with Jordan Leslie through these last 2 weeks. He has the kind of confidence with his guys that they did in 2020 to play better in the secondary while still being able to get pressure with 4 and 5 guys. So I think we do have a better defense than 2022, maybe even 2021. I'm not going to say anything about this offense just yet, but especially between Green and Marchiol, who do you play at quarterback from here on out? So I'm not going to get into that debate. Maybe we'll do that we will definitely do that in the preview show for Texas Tech. So we'll talk about that later. But I just think this game was all about the defense and the defensive improvements that they've made from this past year to this season and what we're seeing unfold. That Leslie and this defense has confidence right now to create the kind of game plans that he knows that these guys can execute. They're further along in their development, and they're making plays. So I think this was huge win to get on the schedule on a path toward bowl eligibility that I know that many in the media were questioning all summer long, saying West Virginia could only get 3 wins for a whole season or maybe even fewer. So this was huge toward bowl eligibility, but also toward this team's goal, in my opinion, of 8 wins, including a bowl game appearance. So we'll see what happens next week against TCU. I think it keeps building. It's like Pitt, okay, here's one checkpoint, Texas Tech, here's your next checkpoint, now here's TCU. So it's all building up to this, the national finalists from a year ago. So I'll be excited for that one. I'll break that one down for you later this week. If you enjoy this content, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Love to hear your comments. How'd you feel about this game? Leave them here on YouTube or follow me on Twitter and catch me there. So thanks for tuning into this game. What a one for the memory banks, what for the history books, and hopefully this is another page turned in a positive direction for this program for not only this 2023 season but beyond. So awesome to get this win, 20-13 over Texas Tech. Awesome for all of the people who decided to stay through that crappy weather. That's one you'll never forget. And we'll talk about Horned Frogs, Mountaineers later this week. Hail West Virginia. Let's go. Thanks for watching.